It's time for a short-term punt, and these are the best options. Welcome to the Gianni YouTube show. Hope you guys are well. We're waiting. We're ready and waiting for game week 9, aren't we? The international break has been long, but FPL is back, and we've got some beautiful short-term punts this week. And I myself am going to be short-term punting because I've got a wild card around the corner. So shall we have a look at some of my best short-term punts this week? Well, at number 1, and you're going to be surprised at this, I'm going to go to Man United. Why Man United? Well, look at who they're playing. I think Sheffield United's as good as it gets on paper for them. And I'm so impressed with Højlund up front. Like, to invest in that United attack for a reliable 90-minute man that produces goals and assists, we've had to pay big money for Bruno and Rashford. Well, Højlund's so much cheaper than that. And I think he's a really good option for this fixture. Sheffield United concede most of their chances centrally down the middle. And if you've got, say, a Darwin or an Alvarez, and we might hear that a Darwin or an Alvarez isn't starting this weekend before the deadline, you might look to make that move. So Liverpool playing the 12:30 kickoff, Man City in the 3 p.m. kickoff. Now, historically, these are two teams we get very good leaks for. Now, I hate team leaks, but it's a thing. It's part of the game. So FPL Twitter will have some fake leaks and some good leaks. If you're wanting to know if your Darwin or your Alvarez starts, I suggest you're engaged or on Twitter before the deadline. Alvarez is on the 3 p.m. kickoff, so we might not get it. Darwin, we definitely will. I sense we'll get both. I also like, as a number 2 option, Isak of Newcastle. Crystal Palace are good defensively. They're not the best, and away from home, they're not as strong. Newcastle, however, in attack in recent weeks have been so good. And Isak leading the line so well for Newcastle now, isn't he? So I expect Isak to start. There's always the concern with minutes and sharing minutes with Wilson. But Isak, I think, against Palace is a really nice punt. And remember, Palace without Eze, sure, defensively shouldn't make too much of a difference. But they're just a weaker team in general without Eze. A much weaker team without Eze, and obviously without their man from last season, Zaha too. So those are my 2 favourite attacking punts in terms of number 9s, in terms of FPL forwards. But there's some midfield punts too. And again, I look at my team and go, okay, Darwin could start, but what about making a midfield transfer? Now, I think Jota's going to start, and I think Jota's a really nice pick this week. Whether he's on the left for Luis Diaz, again, who will be travelling back from South America, or if he's the number 9 for Darwin, I like Jota as a 1-week punt, not necessarily a long-term move. But if you're wildcarding like me in game week 10, then you can afford to make a 1-week punt. So I could say go Saka out, who's now back to his original price of 8.5, and go Jota in for 1 week. Saka goes to Chelsea in a tough fixture. I expect him to be fit nonetheless, but Jota has the upside this week with a home fixture against Everton. However, I also like another midfield option at Man United, Bruno. I could go Saka to Bruno, so there's an option for me. And then I also think, okay, Mitoma's got a really tricky fixture. Away to Man City is the toughest fixture, right, for a team like Brighton, surely. Therefore, could I look at a short-term punt there? And Gibbs-White plays Luton. I know you like Gibbs White, really, but maybe that's a move, or Mbomo has a good fixture against Burnley. So there's options there. There's options aplenty. And shall we have a look at my team and how I'm set up then? Because I've got some decisions to make on my bench. I've got, I think, 0.7 in the bank and 1 free transfer. So at the moment, I've got Turner in goal. And Turner and Onana is a really interesting one. Turner's clean sheet odds, according to the bookies, are 47%. So Turner is 47% likely to keep a clean sheet. Luton don't score many on the road, do they? Onana's 42% likely to keep a clean sheet. So the bookies would suggest, and then they're usually right, the bookies, that Turner's the better option for clean sheets. Whether or not he's the best option for FPL is another question, because the bookies aren't working out the chances of how many saves that keeper's going to get and how he does in the BPS for bonus points. You could argue Onana does better in the BPS, and therefore there's very little in it, and I might yet change. Again, I want to know more about that Man United defensive line in front of him, and who's playing centre-back especially. So I'll be looking at some of those predictors for that one. So at the moment it's Turner, could be Onana. I've got Trippier and Porro and Gvardiol. I think all those 3 defenders with a heavy heart are going to be sold on my wildcard in game week 10. Even Trippier, who's been so good. But I'm going to need those funds to accommodate Mo Salah, so he might have to go. In the midfield, I've got Saka, who could go for a punt option like a Jota or a Bruno. Mitoma, who could go but is less likely to. because I still think Brighton will score against Man City. Son and Foden and Maddison. Now, Fulham at home is a really good fixture for Spurs, and Son and Maddison, they're good captaincy options this week. They really are. The problem with Son captain is his minutes. In the last 5, he's not played 90. Coming off at 75 minutes ain't necessarily the one for your armband. And then Foden looked right for England in the week. Brighton's a good fixture for Foden. He really is. And then I've got Darwin. Again, if Darwin's not starting, I sell and I go to Højlund, I think. I've got Haaland with the armband. And on the bench, I've got Colwill first sub. I've got Archer. I've got Kabore. But let's talk a little bit about that armband, because captaincy this week, loads will look at Salah if they own him, and loads will look at Son. I prefer Haaland, and when I look at some of the numbers of Brighton, I really like it. I really like it. So the Brighton defence this season, firstly, the Brighton defence under De Zerbi's never been great. The Brighton defence under De Zerbi will always concede big chances, and it will always concede goals, because they're a team that commit numbers going forward against everyone. They will go to Man City, and they will play. Absolutely have a go, right? So with that in mind, let's see what we think to the numbers both last season and this season. So, non-penalty expected goals per 90. When we take 2022-23 and then 2023-24. 1.18 last season, so they're conceding just over a goal a game in terms of expected against them. This season, they're conceding 1.67. It's a big jump. That's an extra half a goal a game against them. Now, the best defensive sides in the league don't even concede 1 XG. Brighton are conceding 1.67. When we look at big chances conceded per 90, again, the best teams, they concede a big chance a game, maximum 1.0. Well, Brighton last season were 1.84. This season, they're 2.75. So when I look at those numbers, they're conceding almost 3 big chances a game. They're conceding 1.67 goals per game in expected data. Well, they're about to face the best attack, the best number 9, the game's best player. Erling Haaland, for me, is an easy captain choice this week. I know he's blanked in the last few. I know Son plays Fulham. I know Salah plays Everton. But still, don't be put off just by the fact that Brighton are a good team, because they are a good team. But look at their defensive numbers. It's Haaland for me. And that's why I'm very happy with Foden. That's why I think if you're punting this week and you saw that Doku was starting and you wanted to go for a Doku on a 1-week punt or a Grealish, I don't think that's a bad move either. I think that game at the Etihad has goals, and I'm pretty pumped for it. In terms of the other games with goals, I do expect Spurs to beat Fulham convincingly. I'm just not entirely convinced on giving Son the armband because of that 90-minute appeal. James Maddison, I think, is a really nice pick this week. And Pedro Porro in defence, I'm super excited about. Elsewhere, I don't see a huge amount of big wins for my players. So I expect my Man City players, expect my Spurs players to deliver points. Outside of that, Matoma, Saka, meh. If Darwin starts, and that is a big if. By the way, Darwin has been photographed in training. So Darwin is back training for Liverpool, although he did play 90 minutes for Uruguay on, Tuesday night, and he's had that long flight home. The final part in terms of big points expected for me this week, and I still am hopeful of a green arrow, is Kieran Trippier. So again, one reason not to wildcard this week and to wait another week is by holding out this week, I have players like Pedro Porro and Maddison and Foden and Kieran Trippier, who I don't think will be on my wildcard in 10, but I absolutely want them in 9. They've got good fixtures in 9. Now, Trips has just been absolutely smashing it of late when we look at his points. Not only the clean sheets that all Newcastle defenders have been picking up, but with Trips, it's way more than that. I mean, he conceded 2 goals against West Ham and still got bonus points. He gets assists left, right and centre. Palace are vulnerable. I think Palace are vulnerable without Eze on the road. And with that in mind, Trips is a really good option this week. So I'm hopeful of points there. I'm not too sure about Gvardiol because I think Brighton score. But Pedro Porro, I'd like to think he keeps a clean sheet. And attacking returns, he's due. He's really due. He should have scored against Luton. So it should be a relatively high-scoring week, I think. If you own your Man United players this week, guys, don't sell them, right? I've been saying sell them, but not this week because it really is the best best game on paper. And elsewhere, like Arsenal players, I think it'll be relatively tight against Chelsea and low scoring. And there's a few fixtures in there. If you own an Mbommo, I think he's definitely a hold. Like, sure, managers have been frustrated, but Burnley at home is a nice fixture for Mbommo. The Liverpool-Everton fixture, whilst Lowe's will captain Salah, 2 points here. Number one, being the early kickoff in terms of, just because it's the early kickoff, I'm not going to captain that player. Don't let that affect you. But do let it affect you that Liverpool historically struggle in the early kickoff off the back of international breaks. And that's because Liverpool have a ton of international players. Like, Burnley ain't going to struggle off the back of the international break because most of their players haven't been anywhere. In fact, they've had 2 weeks on the training ground. And with that, they might be a little bit better. Liverpool have had their players in all four corners of the globe. And with that in mind, they're coming back late and they haven't had a rest and they haven't had time on the training ground. So Liverpool versus Wolves a couple of weeks ago was a prime example. The last international break, they went in at half-time down. And it was only after a rocket from Klopp they came out in the second half, some substitutions later, and were a much better team. But it was a very slow start. And I wonder if Everton will be a little bit better prepped than we expect them to be. And if actually that game's a lot tighter than we think. Now, Everton have had some good underlying numbers this season as well, don't forget. In terms of prepping for this week, you're watching videos like this, and I appreciate you all hitting that like button. Thank you for that. But the best way of prepping at the moment for me, to find out who's had minutes for all the internationals, to find out who's flagged, to find out how teams are setting up with predicted lineups, and to look at the data of the season so far. All of that info, the best place to look at is Fantasy Football Scout. So if you are interested in using Scout, you don't need to sign up. You can just go and check out Fantasy Football Scout and access loads of free stuff. If you want a little bit more, you can become a member and you can sign up and you can read more articles and watch more videos. They do members only videos and access all that data in terms of the tools they have. So do give Fantasy Football Scout a little sample as well. Always best during the international breaks to really stack up on your research. Information is king, and press conferences on Friday will always be so important. Guys, very good luck this week. May your arrows be green, and I'll see you.